Picture the Sahara. Endless sand dunes, the sun beating down, and no ice-cold beverages in sight. But it didn't always look that way. Thousands of years ago, it was lush, green, and basically unrecognizable. And this paradise was also home to human populations, but they've been really hard to study. Researchers have wondered who they were, where they came from, and how they connected to other human societies at the time. These are big questions, so you'd think that we would need lots of data to answer them. But it turns out that the key to unraveling all of those mysteries was hiding in a cave buried in the DNA of just two people. It may sound odd to hear the Sahara was once unrecognizable. After all, it's the most iconic desert in the world, filling nearly all of northern Africa. But it wasn't always a desert. Between 11,000 and 5,000 years ago, it had trees, lakes, and significant rainfall. We call that lost biome the Green Sahara. This time period is known as the African Humid Period, part of a larger cycle of wet and dry periods in the region that stretches back more than 5 million years. These climatic changes are related to the Earth's tilt and orbit, which shift slowly over long periods of time. Those tiny shifts caused feedback loops between the climate and vegetation, and once those get going, the transition between wet and dry periods happened really fast. At the start of a wet period, the Earth is tilted in a way where the northern hemisphere gets more sun. That increases surface temperatures, causing more evaporation and leading to heavier monsoons. More monsoons mean more water, which leads to more vegetation. That vegetation absorbs more solar radiation, which raises the surface temperatures and increases evaporation, leading to more monsoons, and so on. Evidence from pollen and leaf wax molecules suggests that this happened around 5,000 years ago, ending the African Humid Period and creating the Sahara Desert as we know it. But before then, you had lush grasslands with shade and plenty of permanent water sources. And when you have grasslands with shade and water, you have people. Humans began settling in Egypt a little over 10,000 years ago and continued to inhabit the Sahara until the rains stopped 5,500 years ago. Archaeological evidence indicates that the earliest of these societies were made up of hunter-gatherers who may have domesticated some animals and even created Africa's earliest ceramics. Then, over the next several thousand years, the people of the Sahara started living with sheep, goats, and cows. Those domesticated goats and sheep were likely brought to the continent from Asia, when people migrated in from Sinai and the Red Sea, later spreading out over northern Africa. The hypothesis has been that people from northern Africa moved into the Saharan region when it started going green, and later mixed with populations from the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa. But this isn't the easiest hypothesis to test, because while some archaeological evidence exists, the genomic data that would allow us to see how people are related is in much shorter supply. The dry, sandy, windy conditions of the modern Sahara are absolutely terrible for preserving DNA, so when human remains have been found, they typically can't be genetically profiled. To fill in the gaps in our understanding, all archaeologists needed to find was one individual with enough preserved DNA to sequence. And in this case, they managed to find two. But before we get to that story, all research needs funding, including ours, so here's a quick ad break. Thanks to Brilliant for supporting this SciShow video. Brilliant is an interactive online learning platform designed to help you build real knowledge through lessons that you'll actually remember. And they do that in a few different ways. By encouraging critical thinking and problem solving through puzzles and quizzes. By helping you make a habit out of learning. Their daily encouragement and manageable lesson length make it possible to turn learning into a daily routine. By offering a range of lesson topics that you'll actually want to learn about. And by giving you the infrastructure to move at your own pace through lessons crafted by experts at the top of their field. It's all free to try at brilliant.org/scishow, the QR code on screen, or the link in the video description. And you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription. In 2003, archaeologists discovered a rock shelter in southwestern Libya called Takarkori. The site contained traces of settlements spanning between 4,000 and 10,000 years ago, and was a treasure trove for learning more about the people who lived in this part of the Green Sahara. They found pottery shards at the site that had traces of milk fat in them, which is the oldest clear evidence of people in Africa milking livestock for dairy products. And way in the back of the cave, there were human remains from 15 burials dating from between 8,900 and 4,800 years ago. Two of these were women in their 40s who both died about 7,000 years ago, during that Green Sahara period. And as the Sahara dried out, so did their remains. They essentially became natural mummies, and the slow and controlled drying process meant their DNA was preserved too. In 2025, researchers published the results of a genomic analysis that revealed who these women, and presumably the other inhabitants of the Green Sahara, were. It turns out that the hypothesis about Northern Africa, Mediterranean, and Sub-Saharan Africa mixing in the region is most likely wrong. The women had the most in common, genetically speaking, with a group of people who lived in what's now Morocco about 15,000 years ago. Even though Morocco would be part of the Green Sahara eventually, this was millennia before the African humid period began, so these Moroccan people weren't surrounded by greenery. So the fact that they were related to the Takarkori population from 8,000 years later suggests that the same lineage of people had been populating the region even before it became a lush grassland. Like their Moroccan relatives, the Takarkori individuals share very little genetic material with the people of sub-Saharan Africa. So while we've known that the Sahara Desert is a barrier to human migration today, this suggests that it was a barrier even when crossing it was far less dangerous. The two groups aren't 100% similar though. For starters, the Takarkori women had less Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthal DNA is primarily found outside of Africa, so the more of it that you find in African people's genetics, the more likely it is that that group of people mixed with non-African human populations at some point. The Moroccan population had about half as much as populations found around the Mediterranean, and the Takarkori individuals had 1/10 as much. So the residents of the Green Sahara were actually more genetically separated from the people from the Mediterranean than they had previously been. So they probably weren't mixing with Mediterraneans either. Which raises a whole new question, because their Moroccan ancestors hadn't domesticated livestock. So where did the Takarkori people get their dairy herds from? Either the people of the Green Sahara managed to figure that out all on their own, or they had contact with people outside of the region, but in a totally platonic way. And because the pottery at Takarkori resembles pottery found elsewhere in northern Africa, these researchers think it was the latter. So this DNA told us that despite evidence of interaction and cultural exchange between populations during the Green Sahara period, there wasn't much in the way of genetic exchange. The area seems to be more of a melting pot of ideas, but not of populations. These two people helped us learn about trade, agriculture, migration patterns, and the economies of people living 7,000 years ago. So if you don't feel like you can make a big difference in life, there's always the chance that you will from beyond the cave. Grave.